Okay, I will share the screen. Okay, we're live. So thank you, Payal, for being here. I'm super happy, and you were the last one before the summer break, so it's cool. And yeah, I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time, so I'm happy we finally meet, and you're agreed to share your expertise with the fashion founder that are on Simone Business Club. So yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself and go ahead with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I've also started following you and I love what you're doing in your community. I think it's such a much needed space. And this presentation is going to be such a good way to kick off the summer because you can go be creative, learn everything about what you want to implement in your business and come back like ready to get started. So I'm super excited to take you through it. So I just want to give you a quick introduction. I'm Payal. I run a boutique agency. It's called the Nex Era Collective, and we work with next-gen brands. Next-gen brands are sustainable, circular, causing any positive consumer shift. And just that, I will go into more of my intro later on. So let's begin the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if everything is visible in my screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. I'm just going to make it into presentation mode. So today's topic is how branding and marketing can make your sustainable fashion brand impossible to ignore. And I'm so excited because I've built out this 6-step framework and we're going to cover it step by step. But before we get to the framework, we're also going to cover a lot more beyond it. So the first thing I love to start is what even is a brand? We talk about brands all the time, but we step back for a moment to really understand what a brand is. So if you're watching this replay and not live, I would love for you to pause it for a minute and think about what does a brand mean to you? Write out everything that comes into your mind. For the sake of this presentation, I'm going to move on and we're going to think about what do you think when you think about a fashion brand? What comes to your mind? Which brands come to your mind? So we did this survey, and obviously the top brands that came into people's mind were Nike, Chanel, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and Zara.
Yeah, for me, it was Chanel.
For you, it was Chanel, yes. So why do we think of these brands? What do we relate to them? Why do they come up in our mind is another thing we did in our survey. And obviously you can think about each point in your point of view, but we're going to bring out what the audience thought. So for Nike, it's cool. You get to feel like you're part of the athlete culture. Chanel, it's chic. You feel elegant. Gucci brings you status and identity. Louis Vuitton does the same. Zara is fun, convenient, and trendy. Who doesn't want to have that easy, convenient life in today's generation is what it is. So now that we know this, we're going to go to another brand that has been quite prevalent in the fashion world is Alo Yoga. We in the sustainable space aren't fan of it, but it has been causing a lot of brand ripples. And so we took a consumer survey to understand why is that. So this is like a direct consumer feedback. Wearing Alo Yoga, I feel like I belong to a group of fitness girlies. I am one of them. I need to know it, feel it, and maybe let others know too. It's part of my identity. From this statement, you can see very clearly that by wearing this activewear, she feels like she belongs to a certain community or niche, and she would like people to know about it without having to communicate. That's what a brand does. A brand is a feeling, a construct that lives in the mind and sometimes even the heart, rent free. It makes us feel seen, heard, and like we belong without ever having to explain why. And this is the beauty of branding. And as we get into this definition a lot, we'll understand why iconic brands are built, why cultural brands are built, and why this framework is so important. I'm glad we started with the branding to uncover and unravel. Now I'm going to take you through what's going to happen in this 1 hour. I'm just going to give you a bit more brief about who am I. We're going to go through a quadrant that I've built called cultural timing, where it takes you across sustainable fashion. We're also going to understand what are the 3 phases of branding, what worked before, what doesn't work anymore, the desire framework that I've built out. Within the desire framework, we'll focus a little bit more about cultural branding and how can you continue to work with me. And obviously, thank you and any questions that you may have. So, a quick guide about me. I've built out a little journey, so it's very clear and easy. I studied my master's in Paris. I did luxury fashion management from Grenoble École de Management. It's pretty much living in my MD in Paris era. I went and interned in social media for a luxury fashion startup. From then on, thanks to passport issues, I moved to Dubai and I spent 6 years in the region, and I developed a lot of my research, trading, strategy skills within the region. And I work with some really cool brands alongside that. That wasn't enough for me. I was getting a lot into sustainability and spirituality at the same time. So I did launch my first brand on the side while I was there. You can actually see I'm still wearing the jewelry
Nice.
pieces from it. I did that on the side. I launched during COVID, did that for 2 years. So I could write a book on this journey, but for the sake of this, we will move on. I came at an inflection point where my brand wasn't doing enough in sustainability. Um, I wasn't happy with the luxury business that I was working in. I wanted to create an impact. So I decided to let go of everything and said, okay, you only live once. You want to change your directions. And we went into freelance. So 2023 is when I started freelancing and working with all sorts of sustainable fashion businesses globally and providing services around branding, marketing, and research. I obviously grew and scaled that. And from 2025 onwards, I built it out as an agency. And that's where I'm at today. While I've got to work with some really cool brands like Chanel, Ounass is the net-a-porter of the Middle East region, Saint Laurent, Ex Nihilo, really some cool brands in beauty, fashion, lifestyle, e-commerce. I also built some cool brands. This is a brand that I built that actually got funding from Shark Tank Dubai. This is another brand that's a bio-based material brand based in India that has got a lot of accolades, incubations, and competition wins since its pre-seed rounds. An OG brand that started with natural fibers, a brand that was modernizing sustainable swimwear in India. So I love that I've created these brands, but why I've been able to create these brands is the most important thing to understand. It's the humanness and the strategic thinking that builds these brands. So I will explain it through these sentences. I'm from the Southeast, but I've lived outside my country for longer than a decade. I grew up in a middle class family, but I've traveled the world and lived in 5 countries. I run an agency, but I was also a brand founder and a co-founder. I was a brand founder thanks to my experience in luxury fashion. I worked in luxury fashion. I also studied luxury fashion. I lived in luxury, but I also lived in one suitcase for 2 years. I think in systems, but I also feel deeply. So you see, there's a tension, there's a dichotomy, there's a polarity between these statements. And that's really, in my humble opinion, what great strategists do. They don't only build strategy, they feel things. And what sets them apart is what I like to call lived experiences. Lived experiences give you an edge no accolade can.
Totally
So
agree.
great. So moving on, I just want to put a point of view here that a lot of things that I'll be talking about are more centric to the Western market, while they may be applicable to Southeastern, Asian, African, Middle East market, but we are focusing more on the Western market at this point of view. So this is the beautiful framework that I call, it's really empty now, we're going to go through it. This is quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. One is where we start with what's happening in society that's bringing sustainability forward. The second is when sustainability started rising. So this is a wave. So look at it as a surf wave. It's an undercurrent. It comes up. The tide. This is the peak. The tide, the third quadrant, is the peak of sustainability. And then eventually every wave falls, and so does every cultural timing wave fall. And so culture has to adapt to it. We'll understand it by going through it. Obviously, this could be more deeper layered. We're giving it a first layer here. So we're looking from a blanket 2000 to 2015, what was happening in the whole generic sustainable space that made sustainable fashions come in. Humans were creating morality and minimalism back then. There was a documentary that came out called True Cost that was very shocking and like left shock pigs in a lot of communities. Looking at all of this, Everlane started. Ellen MacArthur Foundation started. B Corp certification started. ASCET started. Early veganism was coming into space. COP21 started. This is the undercurrents that were happening in this space. So these undercurrents led to a further momentum that was happening. We saw Greta become Times Person of the Year in 2019. That was the swell era. Good on You was getting stronger. Then people were rating brands and figuring out brands. But also at that time, there was a biggest polarity happening. People started quoting biggest fake news in fashion is the second most polluting industry in the world. Oatly was coming in. We were getting into more veganism and vegan consumed products. Who Made My Clothes revolution was coming in. Meghan Markle was wearing sustainability, and she was a cultural icon at that point of time. Veganism was at its peak. Beyond Burger was doing well. Emma Watson was talking about sustainability. She was also a cultural thing back then. Rana Plaza got a lot of us into sustainable fashion. I personally was one of the one person who got into it from that incident. Minimalism documentary came out that got all of us into deconsumption and wanting to declutter our life. More brands came in this space and got stronger. Allbirds, Evelyn. The books came into the space talking about minimalism. Mary Kondo, The Art of Tidying Up came in, and that had a role to play. D2C wave came in. So a lot of brands were launching in, and every brand was thinking, how can we launch with a unique point of view that's going to disrupt, but also ride that D2C wave? So while all this was happening, what is then happening is we're coming towards the peak. And what's happening in the peak is a lot of brands are coming in that may not be related. There was also rise of athleisure because we went into COVID at that point of time. There was more news around why fashion isn't the most sustainable, most polluting industry in the world. B Corp was getting a backlash, a back rep. Climate was becoming climate fatigue instead of climate positivity, and anxiousness was coming into play. We were going into basic dressing. Policy changes started happening in US because of Trump. Reformation was coming in because Taylor Swift was bringing it on. We were going back to building sustainable brands that were 100% basic linen, cotton brands, but there were thousands of brands coming into play with no point of view aside from being natural materials. Greenwashing came strongly into space. Matches fashion was starting to die out. Farfetch was getting sold. Yoga and wellness girly aesthetic was coming in. Milk started to make a comeback. End of perfectionism, rise of Gen Z. Shein was coming. So you can see in every quadrant, there's a lot happening that brings a lot of friction and tension into our worlds. And I'm going to explain how this translates into the next slide. And this is a really great activity to do for any specific niche that you're going in. Go in and see what's happening and what causes the wind to turn. We can already see here, we started with a lot of momentum happening in sustainability. It was gearing up more over here. And then here you see there's a little bit of chaos because the world also changed. COVID happened. US got Trump. We had a lot of things that were happening that were polarizing. Shein was succeeding, but Vinted was also succeeding. Luxury e-com was dying, but luxury businesses were surviving. So this is the dichotomy we want to see. And then where we are today, that is to 2026 and beyond, is we're started to green hush because obviously all of this greenwashing and issues around it, we've become tone deaf to what sustainability means. Greta, while she was the Times Person of the Year, got a lot of backlash because of her support with Palestine and a lot of activities that she did. So she lost a lot of Western consumers to her narrative. Digital product passports are coming up, where we're leaning towards taste in the age of AI. We're moving beyond from the yoga and wellness girly to the Pilates, strength training, high rocks, paddle girly. We're looking at material innovation. Resale spaces are growing big. Sustainability doesn't sell is something we've all come to understand in 2026. That's why we're here in this presentation. Strong policies are coming up in the EU. Ozempic dressing is becoming a huge thing. Meat and fish have started to become good for you. So we went from veganism to meat and fish is fine. We can be moderate. Brand experiences have come up in space. Sustainable brands might be great, but their wear and tear and the fact that they're really expensive is a challenge. And so this is the tide. So this is where we are now. So knowing the wave, we want to understand what are the points we can generate from this. So the 5 really key things to understand here is 1, the secondhand economy, while it is already in a tidal wave, it still has a huge macro wave to come. So resale, swaps, rental men's are all going to become second nature, and clothes will get a new life, a relife, and this is going to become part of our economy. We've already seen this a lot in the West. We'll see it deepen more and also spread across other countries and continents. Wellness and fashion are merging. We must have read studies around how wellness has become an identity. People are leaning away from fashion and going towards wellness. There's a really cool brand doing this. I've put it up on LinkedIn. You can see that. Fabrics that impact our health is an evolving sub-niche. It's a very cool space to check out if you're in sustainable fashion or want to grow your brand with material innovation. That brings me to 3rd. Material innovation is gearing up really strong. People are really testing, researching, getting funding, seed rounds in that space. and it has strong threads to carry because people are tired about sustainability and greenwashing. We're wanting more innovation and research to understand how can we go beyond that dichotomy. Obviously, digital passports are going to cause an interesting shift in the EU space from this year onwards. We want to look at that and see how that's going to affect the sustainable space. While we've understood sustainability doesn't sell anymore, what's selling is brands that are built on culture, a strong POV, and they are consistent in their messaging, and they will have a strong chance to ride the next wave of cool sustainable brands. They understand this. Sustainable brands of the future care about people. So that brings us to what was the three phases of sustainable branding. And we got that from this, we came to the conclusion from this cultural timing quadrant. So phase one was shock, morality, outrage. We were very shocked that, oh my God, this is the impact that fashion has. So activism was the strategy, the shock factor that fashion was polluting the world and do good brands were replacing it. It was enough. It felt good because that shock was being compensated. Then once we got used to the fact, we went on to the phase two. Phase two was where we're looking at moral identity. Transparency got really big in that space. Sustainability reporting got really big in that space. And a consumer emerged who wanted to signal their values through what they brought. Here is what I stand for. This is the Emma Watson and the Meghan Markle era where they were also standing for these values. And it was somehow becoming cool, but it stopped because of all that happened during COVID. And now we've moved to the phase three of sustainable branding, which is creating desire. And that's how I built that framework. The brands that enter your world, enhance your world, and ethics is just the cherry. So basically, the conclusion is that sustainability for a consumer is a cherry on top. It's not the cake when it comes to branding and marketing. So what does the framework look like? I'm so excited to get to this part. So D stands for decode your audience, know them to the T, own their emotional currency. We're going to go through each one of it in every slide. E stands for engineer desirability, make them want, not just care. Shame the expected, disrupt the sea of sameness. Integrate in a culture, find your subculture, become a custodian, not just a tourist parking in their culture. R is for reframe the tension, flip the script, find your polarity, or even rage bait that works for you. E is for earn your era, understand that consistency over time will build cultural relevance, and that if you build this framework out, you will build an unstoppable brand. So let's get into it. So the first one was decode your audience. To understand and decode your audience, we really need to understand the different type of archetypes that sit into the sustainable fashion world, and to see that we have a broader audience beyond just the one narrative. So obviously the first one that any sustainable brand targets is the planet purist. A planet purist is someone who obviously is living a zero waste lifestyle, is buying or consuming very less, expects brand to match their ethics, and is an early adopter of all things sustainable, from passports to claims to certifications. And Ruby, you're the first one to be a brand advocate. The second is the conscious hedonist. She is really conscious about her pricing, but she also values the transparency and material innovation. She's more conscious about how she's curating her world than the planet, but she has a balance of it. So she is thrifting, she's on vintage, she's on Depop, she's doing rental. Sustainability is smart economics for her. It's not the ideology at the moment. She doesn't go that deep. Third is the practical one. Ideally, you can associate the practical one to a stereotypical German audience where they're always looking at practical research, material quality rather than anything else. So they're reading meticulously. They're looking at labels, they're looking at care wash symbols, and they'd be easily happy to spend a higher amount. Are they convinced that this brand is worth it? Then the next one is the fashion girly. The fashion girly is just someone who won't compromise on taste. So you can't expect her to buy a sustainable fashion brand if it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't match her taste aesthetics. The next one is the awakening consumers. We all went through a shift at some point. There's always a consumer that's going through a shift with the knowledge and display of information that's out there. So this girly is mid-shift her identity. She's mixing luxury with thrift. She's still shopping fast fashion, but she is definitely questioning it. And the last one is the quiet curator. She is really focused on her expressive, creative endeavors, and she chooses brands that matches that. So she's probably the one that will lean more to artisanal labels than any of the girls. But can we understand who in this audience is the most targeted when it looks at sustainable fashion brands? Sustainable fashion brands are usually targeting either the planet purist or the practical one. And if you look at the percentages, they are very low percentages. So by just communicating on values and ethics and transparency, you are missing out on the top tiers of girls or consumers that you can convert to build a stronger brand. And obviously there is Gen Z. We don't want to forget about that. So while Gen Z fits into a lot of these personas, we also want to take a moment to go deeper onto them. And I really like to remind this, even though it might be a well-known knowledge, is that millennials grew up without social media. So when we stepped into it, we wanted to show a perfect curated image. We went through the whole follow your passion, do good, faceless corporations, suck your soul era. So we were very morality read, and we came to social media to seek perfection because we didn't grow up with it. We weren't part of it. So being authentic on social media did not come naturally to us. Whereas Gen Z grew up with social media. They grew up alongside it. They saw people talking about their daily life rituals, coming on it imperfectionally, and so they can spot performative behavior and brands who are trying to sell to them very easily. And they've got 99 problems because they're very young and understanding society, but climate change is sitting at their 100th challenge. They get it, but they're also here to explore life. So they need to be entertained. So that's really the crust of the difference between how millennials are sold to and Gen Z are sold to. And unfortunately, a lot of sustainable brands, one, because they're millennial led and they are working on the older playbook, are sitting in the space of selling to millennials rather than understanding how to sell to Gen Z. And so how can you do that in like three easy shifts? So obviously the top ones are millennials here, the bottom ones are Gen Z here. For millennials, you're sold on morals, values, aspiration. For Gen Z, it's what's your point of view? What's your hot take? So morals can be, I'm I'm a vegan brand. The Gen Z perspective is what makes you cool. Like, what is a hot take on you being vegan? Go have fun with it. Explore more, help us understand more. For millennial, they were fine to be sold to ads, advertisements, all of this worked. Brands could sell them. For Gen Z, no, you make us feel part of this. They want to feel part of this because social media was part of their life growing up. They want to feel connected to brands that they're working with. And that's another huge reason that cultural brands are getting stronger now. Millennials followed brands. So if you look at millennials, on their Instagram, on TikTok, or any other spaces, they're still following brands. But if you look at Gen Z, they are following way more creators than millennials are following. So follow creators are the ones that Gen Z resonate with, and that's why influencer marketing or creator economy is growing bigger and bigger, because that's the wave that we're riding at the moment. Now, to understand further in terms of social media, why entertainment and desirability is so important, we need to look at these three important points. The first one is when the survey was asked, what time or why do you use social media? The second response was, we use social media to fill our spare time. The second question was, what is the time that you use social media most? So 70% said that they check social media within 10 minutes of waking up. And the third, when they did the survey to understand the peak engagement time, obviously they matched these two, was lunch hours and late evenings. So now can you take a moment and understand what this means? Consumers are using social media not when they are fully conscious and aware. They're using it in moments of dullness, boredom, and when they're unconscious. So if you're selling them something really heavy or selling them morals, this is why it's not converting. And that's why the low hits or creating fun moments are the ones that bring people into your brand. And once they're brought in, the other aspects also work. And that brings us to the second part of the desire framework, which is to engineer desirability. To do this, the first easy stress test you can do is, you can again pause this if you're on a replay and watching this, is, does your message make the consumer feel responsible or guilty for the planet, or excited to buy your product and be part of your brand? If the answer is feel responsible or guilty, then you are definitely not engineering desirability. If your answer is starting to lean towards excited about the planet or building a universe or creating something, then you're starting to create a brand that is built on desire. There are 5 easy ways that you can build desirability. One is the luxury fashion playbook, right? It's say less, let the content speak. And I know a lot of early stage founders tell me, yeah, but we don't have the budget. So and so we are living in the AI era. Creativity is very easy to build. You can build a campaign and churn it out in less than 3 hours without spending a lot of dollars. So it's not the creativity, it's your version of how a sustainable brand should be that's lacking in this space. Second, if this is challenging for you, you could always go to place with tastemakers. A lot of sustainable brands work with influencers, but they're working in the same small realm of the sustainable fashion influencers, which fall into that planet purist or the practical one. I want you to go beyond. So, for example, if you have a swimwear brand, don't just work with a sustainable fashion influencer. Go to a 16-year-old that's a lifeguard that's showing her day in her life. She's a tastemaker in her space. She's talking about her daily life. Plug that swimwear piece into her life and see how that converts. If you have, let's say, a recycled leather brand that's working with niche leather, go to a DJ who's showing her life, who's booking shows. These are tastemakers. You're going beyond your audience and you're building more desirability and cultural relevance by exploring different spaces and niches and working with people that create taste for you. The third is create tangible value, be creative and or entertain. So I have this idea. If you are an artisanal brand, why are you only talking about the artisans and who made our clothes? Why are you not talking about art in general? Why are you not starting an art club? Why are you not doing a real life event where you get to explore art? This is how you build your brand universe. All of it costs very little to nothing. Fourth is create scarcity. So obviously we know scarcity works in the fashion world and we're a little bit shy to use it in the sustainable fashion world, but you can use it and re-engineer it in very interesting ways. So let's say you are a brand that was trying a new color scheme and it didn't work. And so you lost production, you lost these 200 clothes that went into a different color. But you can reframe that. You can say we were accidentally experimenting and we created these cool pieces in general. These are limited drop, available only for so and so time for an interesting price. So that way you're ingraining the consumer behavior that, okay, this might be a challenge in a production and we're actually helping the business because they would discard this anyway, but we're helping it. We're buying something new, but we're helping the business in some way. And so we are creating subtle shifts rather than completely making the consumer feel guilty about it. And that's the distinctive here. The fifth one is be available in unthinkable places and unthinkable ways. You have to go beyond to create a universe. So if you're a brand that is very astrology led, let's say you have a collection of jewelry, recycled jewelry, and it's all about astrology and numbers and abundance. Why don't you do a monthly full moon event online on Dark Night of the Soul meditation? These are subcultures, sub niches that will bring people into your community and make you feel part of your brand, which is what we were talking about with Gen Z. And so 3 other ways that we can engineer desirability. I'll have to give more examples so it evokes people's mind and they can think what they want. So with repair, it obviously comes towards a lot of consumer behavior shifts. We want to use it in a fun way. So if you were doing an Instagram caption, this is the easy way to do it. Of course, we don't care to repair our clothes. We shop, wear once, and dump, just like our ex treated us. Would you want that to happen next time? No, shop better, be better. So we're using dark humor, but we're also creating cultural relevancy while talking about a very deep subject. Second could be you drop a limited edition dark zine. You say it's a compilation of women who were de-influenced, only bought 2 pieces a year, and let's hear their story of life. So this is creating, again, more association into your world. Third could be you host a mending workshop where all your customers come and mend their pieces and you provide them free mending, or if their piece is beyond repair, you offer them a discount and they can buy a new piece. Third is shame the expected. So if you look at all the brands out there in this space, and I've taken different brands here, you'll see that they're all swimming in the sea of sameness. I don't see any difference in their identity. They have similar materials, similar colors, similar lifestyle photography, similar messaging. So how is a customer allowed to feel something and feel strongly associated to your brand? This is basically giving bare minimum.
Yeah, I
How do
think
we
that's a big problem in sustainability. Like when you talk about sustainable fashion, a lot of people think it's just like white t-shirts and blue jeans, and yeah, that's not fashion.
Exactly. So this is the point. Like this is giving bare minimum. And if you do, and we've done this study, we've explored 50 plus brands, and we see it gets hard to distinct between one another because they literally have such similar aesthetics. And if you go beyond into the brand identity piece, this is usually the color scheme that most brands are using by default because they think this is what should be used in the space. But in this framework, I'd love you to disrupt this space, go bold, go creative, go all in, have a strong POV, see the difference that your brand creates in this world. And another great example, it's a brand while we were working with our clients came up, was this matcha brand. Do you see this as a matcha aesthetics? Yes, it has a subtle hit of green, but it's playful, it's Gen Z, it's bringing cultural relevancy because we know matcha is a space that's already crowded. So we're coming with innovation and disruption. This is what great brands do, and we want sustainable fashion brands to do that as well. I've also given you, as I love to give in every framework, a lot of different ideas and ways to create this. So it's not only just imaginative, it's extractive and actionable. So you can take a screenshot of this and also go into it in detail. But obviously, the first one is stay away from earthy tones. Stay away from basic lifestyle shoots. Get creative. Why don't you shoot on an iPhone? Why don't you get Polaroid shots and make it an analog photo shoot? Why don't you have an immersive weekend with some brand reps in a countryside and document your beliefs, values, way of living? This will create more cultural relevancy and brand building for your business. Why don't you create scenarios that bring in people into your universe rather than educating on guilt? So imagine a scenario, and this can be created with AI. I can create this campaign. You imagine yourself or a scenario where we're 50 years from now and you're creating a film on sustainability versus if we became more conscious human beings, scenario A, if we went the current route, scenario B. And you have a question at the end, you get people to answer through the DMs, through the comments, through an email, through a poll. And if they get the right answer, you also probably give them something in return. You can also build this film with getting a few brands together. Sustainable brands don't need to stand alone if they feel weak. They can collaborate with different brands and bring a universe together. And this is another thing I feel it's super keen. If you're a vegan brand, easy image for you. Show a girl eating a watermelon in one image, show a girl eating raw meat in another image. Don't say anything, let the audience talk about it. Let cheekiness be your point of view. Let that rage bait be the point of view. You want consumers to get in the comment section and have these dialogues. You want that engagement to come in rather than you speaking the truth all the time. Why can't sustainable brands have a bad girl playlist, a baddie playlist? There's a huge feminine archetype there about the baddie girl. Why is it that we want to say that a sustainable fashion girly is a very conscious, a good girly? Create a Spotify playlist that creates and disrupt the space. Flip the script is what I love to say. And so I hope that this is scintillating your mind and getting you to the creative senses. And I wanted to just go back to what I built for my brand and what I learned from it. So when I was building my brand, obviously I was building it in Dubai, the region. So while I made it culturally relevant, I also made cool products. I also built with tastemakers. There was one thing still missing. It wasn't where culture was in the Middle East. Obviously, we know even as of now where culture is in the Middle East. So while I built a brand that was strong and would have worked in Europe than it did in Dubai, what I learned was you really need to know where culture is when you're looking to your audience. That's why I said know your audience to the T, because culture is what's driving brands today and also tomorrow. And so you must be asking, like, what the hell is cultural branding? So for me, this is the best definition. Cultural branding is the art of making your brand mean something. It's not about being seen, it's about being felt. The brands that win don't just enter markets, they're part of moments, movements. They're actively engaging with the consumer at moments they feel part of something bigger than themselves. This is really the crux of culture branding. And this is the reason why we see a lot of these third spaces thriving at the moment, wellness communities thriving at the moment, run clubs, paddle clubs, high rocks club, because we're all in that moment where we felt that loneliness, that anxiety. We've come out of it wanting to feel part of something. All the COVID, remote culture, anxiety led us to let's get together, let's build something that means something. So brands that are there alongside the consumer are the ones that are building strong cultural currency. And another interesting example is cultural branding and cultural symbols don't just happen with brands, they happen in every space and niche. You start looking at life and you will see that. Look at this product. I don't know how many of you know this. I'd be curious to know. But basically, this dress sold for 4.8 million, obviously because it was a dress Marilyn Monroe wore for this very famous video for Happy Birthday President. Why does this dress have such heavy cultural weight? An average consumer, if they look at this dress, it would probably pay $150. But this piece has cultural weight. There's a lore behind this brand that makes it so valuable. There's a history. There's a cultural play at force that made this brand, this piece so valuable. And when you look at culture further, you'll see signals are everywhere, not just in brands, but in things and different things that people do. So the first one, obviously, I'm looking at here is matcha. When someone's drinking matcha, they're ideally signaling that wellness is my identity and I care about my nervous system. When someone's actively engaged in paddle, they're signaling that they love sports and community, not just sports. When someone's wearing a brand like On, they ideally are signaling to the world that they like to believe in quite luxury. They also like to believe that they're active, they have taste, and they're not just chasing trends. When you start looking at tangible things in this world, you start to understand the real cultural symbols and relevance and how you can leverage that for your brand building. So, again, what are ways you can build cultural relevancy or cultural currency? The first easiest way is to find your niche community and subculture. So you have to go beyond just the bracket sustainable fashion. Example, the climate anxious is a subculture. The solo girl is a subculture. There's a culture happening where people are reclaiming religion and Christianity. That's a subculture. Why can't a sustainable brand lean into these cultural spaces and start belonging and creating that currency that they want to? So how do you start doing that? One, you ask, how do I give back to this community? Next, how do you facilitate this subculture instead of exploiting it? So you're coming from an intention of how can I emerge myself in this space rather than how can I extract and like get in and get out? Are we here for the long haul or just till the trend cools off? How can you become a custodian of this space rather than just a tourist that's hopping in and out? Find your cultural carriers, not influencers. The cultural carriers were what I talked about previously, which is go beyond the sustainable fashion influencers, go to different spaces, adjacent spaces, engage with them, build with them, and create with them. And you will start to create cultural currency from day one. The next framework part of it is R, which is reframe the tension, which means flip the script, find the polarity, rage bait, if you will, that works for you. So you look at every iconic brand, they understood that cool brands, cultural brands, strong brands, iconic brands are all built with a tension that's happening in the space. The tensions comes either to surprise, contrast, conflict, or contradiction. If we go a little bit more simplified, could go deeper on it, but because of time and because of going through the same work fast, I'm going to go a little bit straightforward into it. So if you look at it into a simplified way, that means find the polarity, the tension, the angle, the rage bait that works for you. We're going to give you an example, but we're going to understand this tension a little bit more further. So tension captures what people are feeling even when they can't name it. So they're feeling, there's an emergent feeling happening within them, but they can't name it. So something's happening in the Western world where we're looking at the future of work. Maybe future of work is coming into we're not going to work in 9 to 5s. We're going to maybe work 2 days a week. We're going to have a universal basic salary. Where these are all like emergent feelings, but we don't know how to name some of it. They are ambient, contradictions we live inside, and we rely on culture, brands, media, influencers, communities, politicians, friends to reflect them back to us. The most powerful voices offload the cognitive burden of holding it all. When a brand externalizes the tension we've silently been crying, we feel relief, recognition, and we assign them disproportionate value for it. So, a great example of this is, obviously, I don't know if it's a great example, but it's a relevant example. When there are war zones or when there are conflicts happening in the region, there's a lot of polarities between countries. So brands that take a strong political stand, they drop a lot of followers, but they gain a lot of followers as well, because they are feeling positively towards this emotion, and you are tagging along with it. You are ensuring that their values, their feelings are felt, seen, heard, and so they tie to your brand stronger than another. If you look at Adidas today, it changed their tagline to "We've got you." Why? Because culture, people were feeling that the wellness culture, the athlete culture was getting too hard on them. They wanted a chill way. So Adidas named that feeling and started getting people onboarded. So great brands are built on this tension of understanding that there's always something emergent within humans in your subcultures, in your spaces. And if you can tune into that and speak to that, you're going to have a game changer. When it comes to sustainable fashion, some obvious tensions that we see is one, obviously, around pricing. Most people say this: the pricing is really high, we don't want to pay it, we understand the nature of it, but we still don't want to share it. Why don't you flip the script? Why is it that we look at, okay, we need to buy this piece of jacket which we're going to have for 20 years, but only we pay it? Maybe you share that payment with a friend, maybe you're sharing that wardrobe with a friend, so you half it. So you have to come with innovative ideas when you start looking at what's flipping the script or not. The second, which is already very prevalent in the market, is buy now pay later schemes. I don't see a lot of sustainable fashion still leaning on this. Why don't you have the payment schemes ready for them if you want them to be able to buy this piece? Second, obvious tension is, we all know in today's world, after seeing Elbow Lane, after seeing all that's happening, is sustainable brands are struggling. So why are we still working in solace? Why aren't we pulling together, building campaigns together, build a campaign movie together? Let's say you have a dress brand, collaborate with a shoe brand, an accessory brand, come together, create a film, create that FOMO, create that desire of people wanting to belong in your space. Don't struggle alone. Third is wear and tear. We've understood this, that a lot of brands, while they might be sustainable, when it comes to wear and tear, they don't last. Plastic lasts longer for obvious reasons. So they are hesitant to shop from your brand because they've had negative experiences that make them not want to have this experience. So how do you mitigate that? This is an obvious tension. You create a campaign where you are showing in a very creative, innovative way, 50 washes later, this still works. So maybe your tagline could be, this model is wearing our product after 50 washes. That's an easy way to let that tension build. Next is sustainability messaging. We understand that there are two parts of this tension. One, that people and consumers are demanding more of us. We want more transparency. But then the other side is fatigue. They want desire. So how do you club this tension? You make sustainability messaging easily seen and available for the people who want to hear it. So you message it in maybe your insider access communities. Maybe you start a Substack only talking about the sustainability of your brand. Maybe you have email options monthly that go about your sustainability progress, but people can opt out. So the ones that really want to know can be part of it. Or people who've bought from your brand more than 5 times become a brand loyalist, and so they get monthly updates about your brands. There, once you start seeing the tensions and you start looking at creative ways to build it, you start building desire for your brand. I hope that's getting a little bit more clear, because we're at the last part of the framework, which is that cultural relevance is built over time. So, cultural relevance is a reputation you earn in a specific community over time. You cannot expect to be part of a community, a space for 1 month or 3 months and build that relevance. You're putting the seeds in, like any seed, like any beautiful fruit, it takes time to grow. So, you have to nurture that space constantly. Um, Now that we've come to the end of this desire framework, I hope a lot of it is clear to you. I wanted to end it by looking at Girlfriend Collective. It is a activewear brand that was built in the consumption that plastic bottles and plastic was disrupting the space. So they used plastic and created a brand out of it. If you look at the brand today, it's not doing very well. It actually feels like it's dying if you have or have not interacted with the brand. Now, with the framework, we'll be able to understand much easier why. If you look at their current social media feed, it looks like this. There's no disruption. It's super clear. They also focus a lot on body positivity. And as we know from 2026, it started like by 2024, there was a lot of polarity between body positivity and wellness, and that we were promoting something that was unhealthy. So that subculture did not survive, but the brand is still propagating a subculture that isn't a part of any strong emotion at the moment. They were looking at random gifs and random people who weren't fitting into their dynamics. It didn't build any cultural hold. When you look at this social media post, you're like, wait, what? How does this relate to the brand that they're building? I don't get the connection. Paris Hilton has no connection to this. Um, Consumers were wanting plastic to come into clothing before they realized that plastic is toxic for their body. And since the last 2 years, we're all about natural wear and wanting to get materials that make us sweat but not toxify our body. So obviously their business model needs to change in terms of product innovation and newness. And this is one of the reasons why I see this brand struggling a lot. If you look at any other brand, I'd love for you to go and decode it aside from your brand, because it can be a bit heavier of an activity to do it for your own brand. An easy way a girlfriend collective would have done it was really relevant to the entertainment part that I was talking about in Gen Z. I want to see it if it plays here. Otherwise, we will have to go pop out a little bit. Because the TikTok videos sometimes don't pay. Let's see. Okay, it's taking me to her page, not to that. Da, da. Okay, so basically, I'll have to explain it, which is not fun. In this, she's basically talking about, she used the music background of Lizzie McGuire saying, I am an outfit repeater, but you're an outfit watcher. So she recreated the narrative around it's cool to be an outfit repeater. You're the one that watching me, so you're the one that's to blame. So she shifted the narrative, she made it fun, she made it entertaining. And really that's how Girlfriend Collective should be doing it now. Like they should be coming into the Gen Z space and building something that can entertain people to buy their brand. And that's pretty much the end of it. And if you have any questions at this point, I'm happy to take it. Otherwise, you can always drop me a message before we go through that. And if you're looking to decode your brand in any specific capacity, you can book a call with me. We can go through these 3 stages of your brand and figure out where it needs to work and build out the desired strategy on a deeper level. If that's not for you and you want a fun roast session where I sit with you for 30 minutes and roast your brand for free. If you're a tough one, you can handle it and literally leverage your brand and change it. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and just comment roast on the DMs and we can arrange a call. If you want to get more into branding, marketing, subcultures, cultural relevancy, you should follow my Substack where I'll be decoding, and I do decode on a monthly basis. So that's it for me. I hope this has been super insightful and eye-opening, and it's opened your creative channels and you're able to create brands that hold really strong cultural relevancy.
Yeah, well, I can tell it was super interesting, and I talk with a lot of fashion founders that have sustainable brands, and I know it's very hard to like your point of view is super fresh, so I think it's gonna be super useful. But it's always hard to when you're sustainable to know like should I talk about it, but it's super boring, or but if I don't talk about it, but it's always a big problem. So I think it's going to be super useful. And I will publish the replay, and I will put your LinkedIn link and everything so they can find it easily.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Well, thank you. It was great. Thank you so much. Well, have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Do you want to stay on for 5 minutes and chat?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
I will just close the live.